you very much for coming to this webinar on car sharing with IDnow, Wigo, and Bruxelles Mobilité, Brussels Mobility. I'm Harry, and I'm the CMO of Fluctuo, the host for this webinar. I'm just going to quickly run through a plan for the session, then we'll introduce everyone, and then we'll get straight into the conversation. So first, I'm going to start by introducing some numbers from the latest European Shared Mobility Index that we released in March of this year. It's the annual review of 2023, so it has numbers from the whole of 2023 compared to 2022. Of course, we're going to focus on car sharing when we talk about this, and then we're going to dive into the main discussion, which will be the momentum behind car sharing. As you can tell by the title, car sharing has grown 39% in 2023 compared to the previous year. We'll then talk about Budapest and Brussels, because we have two experts from these cities that can help facilitate the conversation there. And also we're going to talk about the challenges of car sharing, what car sharing is facing today, and how we can solve these challenges. So as I said before, I'll start the introductions. I'm Harry, CMO of Fluctuo, and for those of you who don't know us, we are Europe's largest aggregator of shared mobility data. We work primarily with micromobility and car sharing operators, as well as with cities and public transport authorities. And we essentially just provide them with the most accurate data on the market to inform their decision making and so on and so forth. So that's it from me. Edouard, would you like to start us off? Tell us a bit about IDnow and what you do there.
Yes, thanks, Harry. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Edouard Bossier. I've been working for IDnow for almost 12 years now, and during that time, I've followed the meteoric rise of mobility. So today, I'm leading sales for mobility and travel at IDnow. IDnow, as you might know, is a European leading provider in digital identity. We provide KYC solution in all verticals like financial services, telco operator, gaming, and many others. From simple age verification, document verification, and advanced identity verification, we can provide the right solution to verify documents and identities in real time, to electronically sign documents, and to offer reusable digital identities. So we have offices in Germany, France, and the UK, and we are currently around 450 employees. Last but not the least, we are more than active in the mobility industry with customers like SIGShare, Tier Mobility, Virtuo, or CityGo. So really happy to discuss today about car sharing.
Great, thanks Edouard, and thanks for joining. Let's go with the order that's on the slide there. So Martin, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you very much, Harry. Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Lefranc. I'm very happy to speak for Brussels Mobility today in this webinar about car sharing. Brussels Mobility is a regional transport agency for the Brussels capital region, and I work there as the new mobility policy advisor, specifically in the planning strategic department. And there, our goal basically is to carry out the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, a SUMP, that we call Good Move. In which mobility as a service in general, but more specifically shared mobility, has a very important place. We really see it as an important solution for all goals in terms of transports by 2030 here in Brussels. So very happy to be here.
Thanks, Martin. And last but not least, Mark, welcome.
Welcome, everyone. I wanted to keep it as simple as I can. So, hello, my name is Mark Korewski. I'm the CEO of Wigo. We are a Budapest-based car sharing. We are operating for, I could say, for more than 5 years. But last year, we decided to change our brand because we leave, let's say, a very big franchise last year, because we have very ambitious plans around car sharing and shared mobility. So I think that's the reason why I'm here.
It definitely is, yeah. Well, thanks very much, and welcome to you all. So before we dive into the main discussion, as I said, I'd like to go through some key figures to kind of lay the groundwork of the discussion. Today, as we found, there were 930,000 shared vehicles in Europe. which is 7% more than we found in 2022. So on the rise, shared mobility. We also found there were 600 million trips being done on these vehicles, which is 10% more than in 2022, which also generated 2.3 billion in revenue. One thing to note about these numbers is that this does not include station-based car sharing, just free-floating car sharing. So we could say that the numbers are maybe slightly bigger than this. But this is for all modes. So we're talking scooters, dockless bikes, station-based bikes, mopeds, and free-floating cars. If you haven't downloaded the report already, you can use the QR code there to download it. It will also be on the last slide as well if you're interested, but I think most of you will have already seen this at some point. Just to look at where the market, where we've sort of been and how we've arrived at today. On the screen now is the market evolution over the last 4 years. And we can see that the growth is stemming in some respect after some mad years of hyper growth in many cities. And this is mainly due to regulation catching up, as well as the fact that, there's a need for people to prove the economic model. Operators are trying very, very hard to be profitable at this moment in time and have been for the last 2 years or so. And this is sort of catching up in terms of the growth. Growth at all costs is not the case anymore. But I think it proves, just looking at the figures alone, that the shared services have proven themselves already to be integral to a city's transport network, which is obviously a very good thing. At Fluctuo, we've seen that there are 2 modes to watch. The first one is dockless bikes. They've kind of taken over from scooters as the mode that everyone is investing in and doing a lot in. At least the one that's in when we're talking about growth numbers, trip growth, this is where we're seeing the most. But the one that's gone under the radar really is free floating car sharing. That's also booming. So if we're talking about car sharing as well, when you think that the capital expenditure that's needed to actually fund these fleets is so much higher than that of a bike or a scooter, the growth that we see here is really quite impressive. So what we noticed from 2022 to 2023 was that there was a 25% growth in fleets, and then also a nearly 40% growth in ridership. The figure on the right there as well is TVD, so trips per vehicle per day, which showing that these vehicles really are being used multiple times in the day and are serving a purpose in cities. My last slide before I ask the panel what they think is just talking about which cities are the ones that are recording the most trips. And it's no surprise that the German cities are making up 3/5 of the top 5, with Madrid and Milan completing the list. And we're also going to ask Martin later about Brussels, as they are ranking 2nd in trip growth last year. But very positive signs mostly all throughout Europe. The fleets are growing in all of the regions except for one, which is Northern Europe. The minus 13%, just a caveat, is it sounds worse than it is because it is the smallest region in terms of fleet size. So we're talking about a smaller reduction in fleets than it actually sounds like with 13%. But across the board, looking very, very healthy. And with that, so those are the numbers, that's the background. It's time to now ask the experts what they think. So Mark, if I come to you first as a car sharing operator, what's behind this momentum in car sharing for you?
Thanks. I think it's driven by several factors. Just to name some, I think one of the biggest is the high cost of owning a car. The urban congestion is a really big motivator for car sharing. Also, I think not the most, but at least the growing awareness of environmental issues is also taken into consideration. But what I think it's a really big momentum is the digital barrier is in the upcoming consumers and the newcomers is no longer exist. because they are digital native. So to handle a very expensive asset via an app, it's not a barrier, and I think this aligns very well with a digital heavy service like car sharing. And what we also noticed that the urge of owning a own car is getting less and less. So I think these are the main factors behind the blooming of car sharing.
Yeah, definitely some good points there. Thanks, Mark. And Edouard, for you, what do you think is behind this this increase in trips and demand in general?
Yes, thanks. So for me, yes, this momentum is mainly due to three items, a combination of these three items. First one for me is digitization, as mentioned by Mark. Nowadays, with IoT, powerful internet connection, and powerful smartphone, most of the user can now easily access to these services. So that means for car sharing operator that they can offer the best experience and a fast experience. Just remember, 10 years ago, it was not possible to open remotely a car and also to check the identity automatically from someone. The second point for me is the fact that account creation also and onboarding are becoming faster than ever. With AI technology like AI, machine learning, and OCR, it's possible to deliver a result and for document verification or a biometric selfie check in a matter of seconds. And as you might know, instantaneity is really key in mobility. So if a user wants to book a car from a car sharing operator, he can only spend 2 to 5 minutes to register and to check himself before picking up the car. And the last point, the trend for big cities are to decrease the use of personal vehicle, also mentioned by Mark before. And they want to favorize the use of shared mobility like public transportation, micromobility, or car sharing. So for me, these three items are part of the momentum of car sharing today.
Yeah, thanks, Edouard. I guess now it makes sense to have the city perspective. So Martin, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Edouard and Mark in the fact that there's probably a lot of different parameters that explain this very good momentum happening for car sharing now. But there's one global trend that we have been seeing happening in many cities around the world, and maybe quite strong in Brussels as well, is the drop in car ownership rate. It's a parameter, an indicator that we've been measuring for quite a while now. It used to be 75% of households in Brussels that own their own car, at least one car, around the year 2000. And it's dropped last year to 46%. So it's a very significant drop. Of course, there's no direct link that we can make between that and growth of ridership of car sharing, but I think it's a really good indicator and a good potential for market growth for operators. And if I really speak at the local scale, here in Brussels, in the past 2 years, there's been quite a lot of growth in supply. There's been more competition, more operators, more vehicles. And the interesting thing that happened is that we saw a growth in all of the operators in ridership in registered users. So competition actually drove, it was good momentum for everyone, every players in the market. So that's a really good sign.
Just, can I add something?
Please.
One thing that it was really surprising that you mentioned the percentage of owning a car in Brussels, because what we faced in Budapest, it's still growing and rapidly growing, the own shared cars. So despite that, we are growing.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what you're saying, Martin, is that the new operators coming to town has increased the demand in general for car sharing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And created new demand. On that note, the one question I had is, I know that there are station-based systems in Brussels and as well in Belgium and Netherlands. Do you see that both models, free floating and station-based, both have their place?
Absolutely. So it all started around 2003 here in Brussels with the first car sharing supplier, which was Cambio, station-based, of course. The first free-floating operators came around 2016. There was more variation in terms of the providers. But in the past 2 years, of course, most of the growth in supply came from the free-floating car sharing operators. But what's really interesting is that despite the fact that there's less hurdles for free-floating operator to open a market here in Brussels, for example, Cambio, the station-based operator, has known significant growth as well. So it's a combination of these type of services that is useful for many different users, many different needs, that makes less valid or valid excuses to own your own car. And I think that's probably one of the many factors that explains the drop in car ownership rate in Brussels. So if I must say, having both of the solutions and a hybrid model seems to be very interesting.
So yeah, seeing all of those the jigsaw pieces coming together there and to sort of create the whole. Can we let's talk about Brussels now more specifically, and what you've done on your side to kind of foster this environment for car sharing. So I believe that you had some big news in March, Green Deal. Could you speak more about what you've done to encourage car sharing and what the scene looks like in Brussels specifically?
Yes, well, we're the transport agency for the Brussels Capital Region. We don't have all the levers at our disposal, but one thing for sure that we've been doing for several years already, more than 10 years, is putting the topic, car sharing, as much as possible in the discussions. We are pushing the topic to the political level, to the different levels of governance in Brussels. So we are a region, but we have also 19 municipalities. We always, very often on a regular basis, discuss that with them to try to push policies that can favor and incentivize development of car sharing. So that's something that we've been doing with two levers. There's the hard part of the law, the regulatory framework that we've been updating on a regular basis as well to keep track of the evolution of the market. So that's one thing. But now we've tried something new, something that is more of a soft law kind of approach with the Green Deal inclusive car sharing. So we've noticed that there are some topics that are difficult to really set in a text of law, and we've decided to use this tool to have an informal kind of approach to set goals for electrification and to be as inclusive as possible in terms of user of these services. And therefore, this inclusive Green Deal inclusive car sharing has been involving many stakeholders, more than 30 here in Brussels, from the public sector, from the private sector, associations as well. And we are trying to agree on different goals that we set for these aspects.
That's great work. One thing I wanted to mention is that I believe when we were discussing this previously, we mentioned that the demand for car sharing growing is obviously a very good thing, but it's got to the point now as well that there are many car sharing vehicles and parking has become an issue. Can we speak about how the parking situation is and how you think it can be solved with the experience that you've had dealing with the other modes that have been taking to the city and in the last sort of 2.5 years or so?
So here in Brussels, you mean?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, of course, the topic that has been centered in the debates, political debate, or in the press has been about shared micromobility. As you may have known, may know, there's been some obstacles in the past several months. But the fact that it was so sensitive is because, of course, the parking situation. There was a lot of vehicles scattered all around the city. So we've gained experience of how to handle that. But we see some very small trends, but trends indeed about free-floating car sharing posing some problems, some issues to citizens, saying that I see now in my street 5, 6, 7 vehicles parked that take my parking spot. So there might be, it might be a sensitive topic in the future, but it's much less sensitive than it is for scooters. So we see some kind of auto normativity, even in shared mobility as well. It's more normal to have a lot of shared cars than it is shared scooters. So yeah, it's just a global, a local trend that I see happening. Maybe it's going to be a little bit more sensitive, but we intend indeed to update once again our regulatory framework to take that into account and to have a more similar approach, a more global approach about shared mobility services in general, and not mode per mode.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, really interesting. I think this is a good transition to speaking about Budapest now, because I believe, Mark, you were saying that the number of cars is actually increasing in Budapest. So how does that affect parking for shared cars?
For shared cars, it's a very bad situation. And then I had to mention that despite what we face, that the local, let's say, legislators and lawmakers are getting aware about what is car sharing, and they started to discuss how to handle this topic. But of course, we have an election year this year, so everything stops for this year in case of new regulations. But of course, we had a very bad situation last year because most of the majors in Budapest introduced the residential only parking spots on the core area where we are operating. So it was a very controversial move from them because shared cars is also banned from these spots. So it was a very bad for us. But what we've noticed that the parking situation in Budapest is a very high prioritized problem. And we not seeing or not feeling what Martin has mentioned, that the residentials are pointing to us that, or toward us, okay, we are stealing their parking spots. But yeah, it can be the situation in the upcoming years. What I think Budapest is a good example is how they handle the micromobility issues. I think it's a very good example. And what we are trying to convince, the major that let's create somehow similar methodology for car sharing to avoid such problems what we faced, of course, with micromobility.
So the ideal solution for parking, there was something mentioned, I think you mentioned before, about every 500 meters there being...
Yep, that's our suggestion.
That's your suggestion, okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
But as we speak, they are, as I know, they are trying to announce dedicated car sharing parking spots in Budapest. So it's a very, very good and very progressive move from our capital.
Yeah, that's good to know. The one last question I had on the city front is: are there any statistics that either of you have about the reduction in private car usage that car sharing is helping to improve? That goes to either of you, Mark or Martin.
So we don't have exact numbers. What we have we have an estimation that one shared car can, let's say, switch 12 or 10 privately owned cars. But what we've faced and what we know that once a user is trying or using car sharing, they are much more open for other alternative transportation services. For example, public transport, micromobility, bike, whatever. So I think we can be the first step to create a much more mobilized cities, what we have right now, because obviously our city, and I think many other European cities, is designed or try to design to tackle the privately owned car congestion or travel. But we are facing right now the problem that our city is not made for cars. So we need to change the habits or change the way of mobility what we have in the city. And I think the car mobility is not our enemy. I think the ultimately using car for getting to A to B is our enemy. I think car mobility has the point, or has the vital solution for every citizens, because sometimes you need a car, but not in the most of the cases.
Yeah, so the car still has a place in cities, but it has specific cases, and it doesn't have to be all the time. It can be substituted for other modes when possible.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Marta, anything to add to this, or should we
Yeah, but
move on? Yeah.
mode share of the private car use has been dropping in Brussels as well in the last survey that we did, and we have this similar observation than what you just said, Mark, about user surveys of car sharing. They seem to be very much more multimodal than other type of users, and sometimes our stump called Good Move has been summarized as an anti-car kind of plan, but it is not. It's quite the opposite. It's pro everything else, anything else. So it seems that car sharing is very, very good lever and very good policy to work on in order to reach our goals. But again, very important year in Brussels as well. Election, not only at the European, but at the regional level. So we'll see if our transport policies will be critical in the decisions and the final results of the elections.
Yeah, lots to play for. I hope it goes well for whoever you're backing or whoever has the best transport policies. One thing I wanted to say, my colleague Sebastian has been doing a really good job of answering the questions in the chat. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session, but if you want to bring it to my attention, please put it in the questions tab, which is just next to the chat. Then I can read them easier. And if it is directed at one of the guests in particular, please specify, and then it will make my life much easier. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've covered Brussels and we've covered Budapest. Last thing that I wanted to cover today in the main discussion was the challenges of car sharing, which is no small topic. Edouard, we haven't spoken to you in a while, so I'll come to you first. What are the key challenges for car sharing, do you think?
For me, one of the main challenges is the vandalism. So there is two kinds of vandalism, the one from non-user of car sharing operator and the one from user of car sharing operators. For the first one, vandalism from non-user of car sharing operators, it's very hard to tackle this kind of fraud because you don't know who and you cannot recognize the person who will try to vandalism a car. So you always have some solution to have some safeguard feature like the one from Tesla mod, the Sentry mod, if I'm not wrong. Even if it's costly for the operator, you can try to prevent vandalism on your car, but it's very expensive. From the other part, the vandalism from the user, it's more easy to catch because based on the strong authentication at the beginning of the registration, you can log, you can track, you can record every bad behavior from user and create some kind of blacklist or at least to alert them that they are doing bad things with the car. You can also stop identity theft. It's something very common nowadays. You can find an ID card in the street, in the wallet, you can find a driving license. But to prevent identity theft, you can ask for a biometric selfie during the registration and also every time the user wants to book a car. So for that, IDnow can help by providing instant feedback when dealing with document verification. We can cover ID document to ensure the identity of the user. We can cover also the driving license part to make sure he can drive the right car. And also we can make sure it's the right order of the document. And here it's all about preventing from identity theft. So the last topic I would like to mention regarding user vandalism is the fact that there is a lot of account sharing nowadays with car sharing operators. So someone will initiate an account with a real ID document, real driving license, and a real person behind that, but then he will share the account with someone else. So for that, we build a solution that you can use just to re-authenticate the user just before renting the car. So it relies only on a biometric selfie we take, and IDnow will give an OK to go if it's the same person as the previous time. So I think IDnow can bring a piece of solution to prevent from fraud, but we need to be incorporated in the whole picture.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I definitely see the value in if you have someone who is the user and is a good user, but is then with a friend or someone else who is not the account holder, which is then going to drive the car. I can see that as a potential issue. So yeah, very, very interesting. Focusing on the that second part was the known users that we have a solution for this, such as IDnow solution. The first one, which we don't necessarily have a solution for, is vandalism from people that aren't users. I know that in Paris, where Fluctuo is based, Zity was having troubles with this, with their car sharing services. There are many riots and things like this, and the Zity cars were deemed an easy target for people that wanted to cause damage. Martin, you mentioned previously when we spoke last week that now we're getting round to the European Championships again, the football. This happened in Brussels in 2021. Can you tell us, what happened, the extent of the damage, and also looking forward to this year, it's only a few weeks away, what you can do to try and improve the situation and make sure it's not as bad as last time round?
Yeah, indeed. So Euro was critical for that, but it's been an issue for the past 2 years, basically. Vandalism for shared mobility in general, but car sharing in particular. Brussels being Brussels, there's often, and being the capital of Europe, there's a lot of demonstration happening in the streets as well. And sometimes there are, damages being made to vehicles of shared mobility. So the easy answer that we only use in part is that it's not our jurisdiction to actually control, and we don't have that competence as a transport agency. The police force are completely dependent to other level of governance, but we try to play a small role in that because we are in the front row in terms of discussion and dialogue that we have with providers. Free floating station based, we see them on a regular basis, and we try to keep track of what's going on at their level. And clearly, they've told us that it's a really central issue. And if we don't do anything, it could be a big problem in the future. So we try to play our role in raising awareness at the municipal level, at the police level, saying that it's a big issue and we should try to find solutions and ideas to tackle the issue and make it more easier maybe for the operators to make a complaint and sort of things like that. But it's just we play a role of facilitator with our own network that we have from the public side of things.
Yeah, I find that to be a really good initiative, really proactive. I'm sure Mark will back me up and say that losing a car isn't the same as losing a scooter. It's a significant amount of money that you do lose. So it's very important that you can keep as much of the fleet in the city as possible. Do you have anything to add to this, Mark? Or?
Yeah, luckily we are not facing this problem in Budapest, or at least not in a good high impact. What we face and we are struggling is fraud, how we can handle fraud. And also, I think it's a kind of a fraud, but the disposable credit cards are still a huge problem in Budapest. And of course, GDPR isn't helping us, but I think what could be a good thing that if the companies can have shared data sets on fraudsters and let's say bad persons would be a very, very, very good thing to move or handle this fraudster thing. and hopefully we are not importing the vandalism to Budapest.
Yeah, hope so. And Martin, I think there was some sort of not case study, but something that one of the operators was doing to using rider behavior to find out who the bad users are. Can we speak about this? Because I find it's quite an interesting way to find the bad users and make sure that they're not harming the hardware.
Yes, indeed. It was Poppy, a local player here in Brussels of car sharing, who I think it was earlier last year. They used data that was created from the embarked sensors on the vehicle, speed or acceleration from the accelerometer. They use these data to kind of define the riding behavior of users of their own car. And if a certain user was behaving, very badly in terms of the way they rode and drove in the city, they blacklisted these users after several, bad behavior, of course. So I think it was a very interesting approach, a very innovative way to deal with this type of vandalism, but also a very interesting thing from our perspective in terms of road safety, because there's been joyriding or rodeo racing in the city with shared vehicles, which is not a very positive thing to have. So Poppy was very creative in that way. But what was interesting, I thought it was a very positive way to do things. But we've seen some reactions from the political side as well, saying that they shouldn't use this type of data to blacklist people. Where is our freedom, etc., etc. I don't know. I don't really understand the point, but I think it's an interesting signal to share here. It's not always seen as a positive thing to disincentivize bad behavior, which was quite surprising to me, at least.
Yeah,
the situation is very, very similar in Hungary, because we are using this kind of data. Also, we are trying to figure out who is cornering, who is harsh driving, etc., etc., but also who is smoking in our cars. And of course, most of the users are happy, but there is a small percentage, the loud ones, who is saying that, okay, this data cannot be tracked. Who am I to judge how they are driving, etc., etc., etc.
On the smoking topic, have you found a way to stop the damage? Maybe there's damage to the interior of the cars when people are smoking or things like this. You found a way to solve this problem?
We are not eliminated the problem, but I could easily say that we can deduct or reduce by 90% the occasions. Yeah.
And this is with some sort of smoke detector or something installed. Awesome. Presumably this has an effect on the customer experience for the next person as well. How have you seen this? Or
yep, yeah. What we've faced or realized, and we are not counted in the business case when we introduced this module, that the incoming calls, the number of incoming calls, the complaints from our customers are dramatically dropped. So it was a quite good move for us. And as I saw on social media, on our competitors' page, they are requesting this service on their cars.
So it seems like it was a good move then. Great. Well, thank you very much. Are there any final comments on the challenges of car sharing, or are we at the end there?
Come to Budapest and try Wigo. That's all.
What's that?
Come to Budapest and try Wigo.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so if there are any questions, please ask them now on the questions tab, and I will pass them on. I wanted to end with something that we tried at the autonomy conference. We did something called quickfire questions, where we gave the panelists each a panel saying yes or no, and we we asked them to try not to sit on the fence and ask them questions that were difficult but not too tough, just to see where your heads are at. We don't have paddles today, but we'll give it a go anyway. So we try and answer these questions with a yes or no, and then interspersed with your audience questions as well. So I've got one here, which is the parking for shared cars should be free in the city centre. What do we think?
Okay. No, there's no such thing as free parking.
I could say yes. It would be very good to have free parking.
I agree also. It could be an incentive for users.
Yeah. If just one thing that I don't know the situation in other cities, but what we have very big challenge in Budapest that the residential easily can park their cars on the streets for very, very, very tiny amount of money. So it's basically free. For example, for me to store my car on the street, it's cost me 25 euro per year. So basically it's free. So why should the shared mobility could get the same subsidy what the residential can have?
Because you don't have this subsidy, you're paying more.
No.
Much more.
Significantly more.
And and for Brussels though, is that the case?
No, it's quite cheap. It's 25 euros per year per shared vehicles, and it's actually even cheaper for most of citizens. So there's some discussion to be had there, but it's not free, but it's quite cheap.
I see, Mark.
Can you come to Budapest and convince our major?
That's amazing. Sorry. Okay, so next question. So free floating car sharing has a bigger impact on private car use than station-based car sharing. I think there are two sides to this. But what do you think? Yes or no? No, Martin, you go first because you seem adamant.
Yeah, no, I don't think we can really say that free floating is a better solution for citizens. We really notice here in Brussels this combination of both that seems to be working even better than any type of model taken separately.
Yeah, I could say the same. I think it's really hard to distinguish the on service level what caused. What was the root cause for changing from privately owned car because of the free floating, because of the rental car solution? So I think it's a mixed. If the mobility, or let's say alternative mobility, is accessible and cost effective, yeah, that's the main reason.
Totally agree with Mark and Martin. The combination of both can serve some people who live close to the city center, and the other one can serve the people who are outside the city center. So the combination is a perfect answer for that.
Absolutely. I know that from speaking to Dublin City Council that they were saying that they're trying to get all new housing developments to have shared cars in the buildings, so that people aren't having to need private cars. And Dublin is one of the cities where my mum lives there. I'm half Irish, and I go there all the time. And it's one of those cities that's really, really dependent on cars. So for car sharing for a city like Dublin would be, it is very good. I mean, there are two operators there already. Okay, another question. Car sharing will continue the 40-odd% growth into 2024 in terms of number of trips.
Hopefully, yes. Because in 2023 we have a quite challenging year because Hungary were the champion of inflation, so we have some economic struggles. But hopefully this year and next year will be a better year.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Everyone is just in agreement, yeah? Or
Yes, because why not? After all, I mean, growth in car sharing is beneficial for every stakeholders, the operators, the public sector, citizens as well. So yeah, let's try to reach that.
Same also for me, yes. I think all the mobility ecosystem is growing with solution like the mass. Car sharing is part of the mass. Everything is growing, so it's a big yes.
Great. Penultimate question. Tackling fraud and vandalism would make a big jump towards profitability for car sharing operators.
Yes.
Totally, yes.
Hard, yes, yeah.
Yes, because that's the reason why we are investing a lot of money, not just money, but resources to avoid. And also, I think that's the reason why the cost cannot be such low, because there's a significant share of our cost is caused by fraud.
What are the other keys to profitability? If that's one of the big question marks or big solution problems to solve, what else is in the mix?
Of course, operational cost is the key. How we can operate our fleet, how we can maintain our fleet, how we can reduce the out of service cars. So basically, we have a fleet, but of course, a significant amount of cars are always out of service because of accidents, etc., etc., etc. Also, the financial terms is very, let's say, dynamically changing in Hungary. So it's costs us a lot of pain how we can plan ourselves ahead. So basically, yeah, these are the key elements.
Great. We've got a question from the audience here, so Vincent. Some of the panelists said car sharing is a cornerstone of a multimodal strategy for cities. What actions, best practices, challenges can they share on how to make this work well?
I can give part of an answer. I mean, I think one of our strengths was that we worked quite a long time, a significant time in our global strategy, transport strategy with our sustainable urban mobility plan. Again, I quote, it's good move. Go check it out on internet. It's very interesting because it was a very, very wide set of action and policies that has been described and studied to reach our goals by 2030. So we've really integrated mobility as a service, shared mobility in that vision, in that strategy. So it's been key and central and very important for us. I think that must definitely help at the local level, at least.
What we see in Budapest, that I think what is key is to write down, or at least manifest, what are you trying to tackle in your city. So what is the key problem? Is this a parking spaces? Is this the car congestion? Is this the whatever? So write one or two things down. What is the key problem? And the second part is how you can tackle this problem. What is the root use case? What is creating this problem? And once you got the use case, what is creating this problem, I think there will be many solutions. I think there is no golden rule how to solve city problems. But if there was, or if there is, I think many of us living in a very good city. But there is not such thing that one solution fits for all. But I think the main advice from me is to manifest the key problems and the use cases, what's behind the problem. That's all.
Yeah, agree. For me, one of the best practice we can highlight here is the communication between all the mobility provider and the city. They need to draft the solution together, because every city is different. They already have some different structure, existing mobility solutions. So it's all about creating the good solution and a tailored solution for the city.
Thanks, Edouard. I think that's a really good place to leave it. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Marc, Edouard, Martin, for your time. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me by email. I'm going to pop it in the chat at the end. And if you have any other questions for the panelists, I will forward it to them and they will hopefully reply in a couple of sentences if you have any further questions. But again, thank you very much for joining and have a good rest of the day. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you so
opportunity.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.